People are like, oh, well, veterans keep changing jobs. I'm like, yeah, because they're bored, because they have been going and going. They had an op tempo. Even if you were in the same job for 4 years, you were doing 15 different things in that job on a daily basis. And the idea of doing one thing your entire life is like, put me in a toll booth. The individual that you have now that's going out into the workforce, that's going out into academia, that's going out into the service world, they have such high capacity to do so much. And I worry about how can the rest of the world capture that adaptiveness and adapt with them.
I think you and I've talked about it before. It's like, how do I look at the skills that I developed and the experiences that I had in the military, keep the ones that will help me succeed in this new operational environment, dispense with the ones that I don't need anymore.
Is that much of it? That's not much of a change for you, right?
My name is Kerry Kite. I used to load bombs in the Air Force, and now I'm a writer, a filmmaker, and an entrepreneur. Through using the post-9/11 GI Bill to go to college, working hourly jobs to pay the bills, and freelancing my way into a career, I've studied what it takes to successfully transition from service to civilian, and that study has become a conversation. On this podcast, I speak to other veterans, successful artists and entrepreneurs about their transition, what they did well, where they failed, what they learned, and most importantly, how they applied their skills.
Episode 150 features JC Glick, a retired Army Ranger and CEO of the Commit Foundation. They are changing the way highly talented veterans think about their next chapter and create serendipity for them by fostering mentorship, networking, and inspiration.
Welcome. This is Veteran Made.
Our merch store is live at store.veteranmadeproductions.com. Grab hats, t-shirts, and hoodies in both performance and tri-blend cotton fabrics. Use code VM-5OFF for 5% off your purchase. Veteran Made is also sponsored by GoPills, a military-grade nootropic that contributes to brain health over time. Use code VM15 at checkout for 15% off. I get my collagen protein from Bubs Naturals, where you can use code VETERANMADE, all one word, at checkout for 20% off your order. We're also proud to partner with True Made Foods, which makes condiments free from added sugar and sweetened with real foods. Use code VET at checkout for 15% off. We love socks in this house. I get my wife new socks every Christmas. More importantly, we love American-grown and made socks. Use code VETERANMADE15 at rucksocks.com for 15% off. And lastly, I end my day with Rack Out from Bravo Actual to maintain quality sleep, resulting in a well-rested body and mind. Use code VETERANMADE with a space between the words at checkout for 15% off your order. Enjoy the episode. All right. Good evening from the great state of Ohio for me. Good evening from the great state of New York. JC Glick, finally, welcome to Veteran Made.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I've been watching a lot, so I'm excited to have this talk.
Yeah, man, me too. It's been a long time coming. We've been messaging and emailing all that stuff back and forth for the last several months. So I'm stoked to have you on. For those who don't know who you are, give us a brief primer, who you are, where and when you served, what you're doing now, and we'll jump in.
Yeah. So, JC Glick, and I did 20 years from 95 to 2015. I did 11 combat tours, with, either the 75th, the Asymmetric Warfare Group. After I retired, I did what all special operations guys do, right? I wrote books and started a coffee company. But I helped organizations with leadership and culture as an advisor. And then I was fortunate enough, just at the right time, the Commit Foundation was going through transition and needed a new CEO, and I threw my hat in the ring, and I was lucky enough to be selected. So I've been the CEO of the Commit Foundation for about 18 months now, a year and a half. And it spoke to me, right? An organization that takes high potential veterans and helps them make that transition and what we say is transformation into their next chapter.
I love it. I know I told you before we started I was going to start somewhere, but I do want to start somewhere else. It just hit me because I talked to Rod a couple episodes ago about the GWAT Memorial Foundation, and one thing that we were talking about was the kind of generational nature of this war. And what is interesting is that those who didn't, I served with a lot of senior enlisted and officers who were in Desert Storm, but they were quite a bit older at the time. you joined up, 6 years before 9/11. So you actually had a good amount of time in the military before 9/11 happened, but there wasn't a ton popping off at the time. Now that you're looking back 20 plus years later as a transitioning service member and veteran, how do you look back at the GWAT still ongoing and all of that, but kind of couch it in the terms of these high potential veterans that you're talking about? Like, what do you see from your vantage point a little bit pre 9/11 and then through the GWAT? Loaded question, I know. But yeah, just curious. It just hit me when you said that 95, and
Yeah.
then the majority of your time, was post 9/11. So
I was very fortunate. I got an operational deployment to Haiti in 97, right before I went to 3rd Ranger Battalion as a PL. I was with the 82nd. And, I think, you don't know what you don't know when you're a lieutenant, you're new in the Army. And two, you haven't had kind of the experience of combat. And what was really telling for me is a whole bunch of stuff came up during that Haiti deployment that I'm like, wow, nobody ever prepared us for this. Like, you got a Haitian who's stealing your wire that doesn't fit in the rules of engagement. What am I allowed to do? Or he steals a radio. What am I allowed to do to this person? How do I handle this? I was really fortunate that I had some senior non-commissioned officers who had been, grenade raiders, and, they had been in 1st Ranger Battalion and jumped in and, were able to kind of teach me. But I think what the war taught us was we were preparing probably for the wrong fight. And we weren't thinking ahead about all the different enemies that we could have and the future of warfare. We continued to focus on what warfare was. And I think we got to a conflict where, hey, this isn't who we prepared for. One day at JRTC doesn't, one day of insurgent operations doesn't prepare you for Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think what it turned the military into was a problem-solving machine, right? I mean, it was slow at first. It was way too slow at first. But what I like now is I think you have a certain veteran who got out before the war, or maybe even in the early part of the war. They look at the world very differently than the person that's getting out now or even 5-10 years ago, because I think, the decentralized operations that happened, the authority that we gave, our subordinate commands, that really mattered, and the freedom, because it was freedom from necessity. We had to let people make decisions and figure stuff out on the fly because there was so much work to be done. So I think what you've got is, you've got a really, really incredible person who's leaving the military now. And I think that before you had a very disciplined, squared away person. Now I think you got all that and an incredibly unique problem solver.
yeah, that's where I was hoping you would go with it. Because even those who didn't serve in the units that you served in, like, we still had a high op tempo, right? Like, we were still doing a ton of stuff. Whereas, like, guys that I served with on the flight line who were in pre 9/11, it was just, you went TDY, maybe went on a deployment, right? But you weren't really loading bombs, you weren't really loading missiles, they weren't really going Winchester, you weren't doing that all the time. Whereas, I mean, I got to Afghanistan in 2008 and then again in 2010. And it's like, by that time, like, we all felt like pretty seasoned, and it only been a few years. And I was in middle school when 9/11 happened. So, like, so much life happened from that previous generation of military service member that I could have been a part of versus the military service member in a coalition that I am a part of now. It's funny, my wife and I were watching, did you see American Manhunt, the Osama bin Laden 3-part documentary?
I've not watched it yet. My kids are keep telling me I need to watch that.
It's really good. And as we were kind of debriefing on it and talking about how, 9/11 happens, and the Secretary of Defense was not prepared to move as quickly as the president wanted the military to be able to move. And the intelligence services obviously jumped in and said, we will move very, very quickly. And that obviously changed the course of history and changed the course of the war, because the military was catching up to the intelligence service and services. And obviously there were units within the military that could move that quickly, and very quickly got attached and went in and got that experience. And then everything kind of trickled down to the rest of the conventional forces. But I was thinking about it through the lens of what we're talking about, which is the generation of veteran coming out of the GWAT is extremely unique because of all of these things: the multiple deployments, the high op tempo when you are deploying, the training tempo when you're not deploying. I mean, I was in for 4 years, and kind of looking back, my man, actually kind of feels like I was in a little bit longer, because I got so much in, and it did prepare me so well for life and work as a veteran. But just like the military was preparing for the wrong conflict, I think the military and the DoD was preparing for the wrong set of civilian parameters that they were tapsing people into.
Yeah, I think, when you think about it, and, regardless of how you thought about his politics or whatever, but I look at like what Rumsfeld did at the beginning and how he forced units to be lighter, more adaptive. And I'm not saying it's just special operations. Like he was in the weeds on everybody, but he was challenging assumptions that, well, we've always done it this way, so there's a right way to do it. I mean, McChrystal once challenged us in a clamshell when we weren't doing so well, and he goes, "You're not the best, you're the best available." And when you're the best available, now all of a sudden you have the freedom to innovate and try some different stuff and do some things differently. So I think what I'm excited about is, as I look at the people, whether they've been in 4 years or they've been in 20 years or 30 years, they're leaving a very different military than existed in the military that I came into, which was very regimented, this is the way you do it. And it was very clear. It was very neat. It was very orderly. And now you have people that one of the things, people are like, oh, well, veterans keep changing jobs. I'm like, yeah, because they're bored, because they have been going and going. They had an op tempo. Even if you were in the same job for 4 years, you were doing 15 different things in that job on a daily basis. And the idea of doing one thing your entire life is like, put me in a toll booth. That just sounds horrible.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a gift to the rest of the nation if they can harness it, right? We have this incredible ability, but again, the dichotomy of service, and I've heard you talk about this a little bit, but the dichotomy of service is thank you for your service and you're low skilled, low wage.
Right.
You're not experienced, right? The civilian world confuses talent and experience, right? Where we don't do that in the military anymore. I think we used to. Before war we did, but once war came, talent beat experience every day to get on that helicopter to be on target. So I think that the individual that you have now that's going out into the workforce, that's going out into academia, that's going out into the service world, I think they have such high capacity to do so much. And I worry about, how can the rest of the world capture that adaptiveness and adapt with them.
Yeah, it's one of the most difficult things about transitioning out of the military during this period of time is you very quickly either realize what you just articulated or have some kind of feeling that that's what's going on. And we were not trained, and we are not trained to operate in this environment with the skills and experiences that we got in the military, right? I think you and I've talked about it before. It's like, how do I look at the skills that I developed and the experiences that I had in the military, keep the ones that will help me succeed in this new operational environment, dispense with the ones that I don't need anymore? That's if not easy, relatively simple to do in that old operating environment, because whether you're, multiple fronts, multiple theaters, right? Like you do the same job, you do it in a different theater. There's just adjustments you're going to make, but it's the parameters are a little bit smaller, right? Depending on your job, right? Like the flight line's always the flight line, but the weather is different, whatever it might be. Whereas then you get into the civilian world and you have this choice fatigue of all of these options, which is why you're saying we jump around from job to job.
Yeah.
It's actually on us, not individually, but us as a community to say, hey, how do we adapt these skills and experiences that work, dispense with the ones that don't work, and then go seek out mentorship in this new operating environment that then says, hey, look, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm not good at. Where can I fit in and how can you help me? Right? Veterans, we're not trained to do that. But once we start doing that, we see success.
Well, it's funny because, and we talked about this not too long ago, but, we're very clear on the words that we use when you come in. We transform you from a civilian into a warrior, right? We spend a minimum of 8 weeks. That's the Air Force basic training. That's the minimum 8 weeks, and a minimum of $55,000. That's actually what the Army spends. I think it's funny that it's longer, but we spend less than the other services. But then, and we continue to build upon that transformation, right? We continue to give you all these great skills, and we give you identity, we give you purpose, we give you community. Everywhere you go, it's clear. And then at the end, we spend $800 in 2 mandatory days, and we say, "Go get them. We've given you all these great skills. Go." And what we need to do is another transformation process, where forget about what you're good at. I almost think that that's less important. I want to know, what do you like? What did you love about the service? What did you hate? Okay, what brings you energy and joy, and what do you like? Because the biggest myth, or one of the biggest myths that you get in the military, is you'll never do anything as cool as you did in the military, and you'll never meet people as cool as you did in the military. And I get why we say it. It's a retention thing, and it makes us all feel good, and it's a lie, right? In the last 10 years, I've met people who are so awesome. They never even thought about putting on a uniform. I've gotten to do things that I never imagined I would do. Right? I do cool stuff all the time. My last chapter, as much as I loved it and I wouldn't trade it for anything, the chapter I'm currently in is way better. It's way better. My life is better now than it was when I was in. And it was great when I was in.
Yeah. And you have the benefit of doing both, right? Like, it doesn't have to be binary, kind of like you're saying, but it also, to challenge you a little bit, it doesn't have to be binary. Like, you don't have to look at it now and say, like, oh, this is better than that. I don't hear you saying that exactly.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that you can build the life that you want.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's why I'm really proud of Commit, is because we help people, right? Think about that at an individual level. What's important to you? What are your values? I talk to workshops all the time, and I'll say, how many of you have your PMP certification? And every hand will go up. And I'm like, so you all want to be project managers? And they're like, no. So why did you do that? Well, everybody told me this is what I should do. No. Do you want to? No. Well, then don't. And oh, by the way, even if you want to be a project manager, you don't need a PMP, right? I got a 26-year-old son, doesn't have a PMP. He's a project manager for a construction company making great money, right? I mean, we need to make sure that we get rid of the myth that your next chapter can be just as good, if not better, than your last chapter. Your life should get iteratively better, right? I mean, it really should. By the time we get to a certain age, life should be like awesome all the time. And what you want to do, you do have a lot of choices, but that doesn't mean they're all good choices for you. And maybe what you're good at. I mean, we have people in the Commit Foundation who are, they were aviators. They don't want to have anything to do with planes. Okay, cool. Hey, I like farming. Cool. All right, let's figure that out. You want to go be a farmer? Yeah, we'll take care of that. We'll help you with that. I think that we need to create this, and again, this is where you said you wanted to start, but we'll get here now, is if we're going to transform civilians to warriors, we need to do another transformation from warrior to citizen, not civilian, right? You shouldn't go backwards. You should go forwards. And I see the difference between a civilian and a citizen is civilians are consumers. Citizens are contributors. And we have this incredible population, 200,000 folks a year, that can contribute meaningfully to this nation and to the world. And we we as a country need to do better at setting the conditions so that they can.
So let's back it up. So let's talk about the difference between transition and transformation, and then let's get to civilian and citizen. So in your view, what is the difference between transition and transformation?
All right. I won't show the logo here. I got a bag of snack mix here, right? It's going through a transition. It was full. Now it's like 3/4 empty. Okay. It's going through a transition. It'll eventually be empty. When it's empty, if I put this in the driveway, it's not a car. It's still a bag of what used to be trail mix. Transitions happen to you. The transition happened to this bag. Transformation is if I want to take this bag and I want to make it a set of tires, or I want to make it a pair of sneakers. It has to go through a deliberate process with a clear intent. This is what we're going to make it into, and it's got to go through those steps to become that new thing. And that's why, I think, and a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I'm going to stick with it. Look, the TAPS program does exactly what it's designed to do. So it's not bad. It does what it's designed to do. It wasn't designed to help you transform. It was designed to make sure you got your disability and your VA and your ID card, and you had a resume. It was designed to take care of the systems of transition. Transformation is an individual journey, and that requires an individual and bespoke methodology to do that. It wasn't designed to do that. And that's why organizations like the Commit Foundation are focused on transformation. How do I take you so you're not just an airman, a soldier, a Marine who's now at Home Depot, but you're this individual, because the same things that made you good at those roles will make you good at other roles. You can be something else. And let's get rid of, as you, I think, perfectly put it, let's shed the stuff you don't need anymore. You don't need to do that anymore. That's not helpful to who you are becoming. And it took me, look, I struggled with transition and on paper, I had a great job. I was doing well. But I was still identifying myself by role. And so I don't identify as the CEO of the Commit Foundation. I don't even identify as Jen's husband. I identify as a guy who aspires to be kind and courageous and innovative and thoughtful. That's who I am. And those things help me be good at being Jen's husband and Casey Corbett and Steve's dad and Grace and Brendan and Isabel's stepdad and the CEO of the Commit Foundation. And in the military, our identity and our purpose are completely tied together, right? And we're given community. And it's a wonderful gift for a 20-something-year-old. It really is, because 20-something-year-olds are searching for identity, purpose, and community. But once you leave that, you got to reconstruct it. Otherwise, you're lost. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you're supposed to be doing in life. And all your people, like, you want to know how important you are, go back to your unit after you cleared it. Right? I mean, God bless, I love the dudes, but like, you're not, like, the idea of soldier for life is a nice idea, and you're not a soldier. Now you're this.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing, right? Is like it is this personal transformation that needs to happen and doesn't need to stop, right? It's an ongoing transformation. Like you said, your life, whether you were in the military or whether you've been a civilian your entire life or a citizen your entire life, your life should iterate forward, right? Like it should get iteratively better. And that does happen individually, but it also happens collectively. And so that integration, that's what the reintegration into the citizenry, into being a civilian is really difficult, because veterans, we tend to over-identify not just with our service, but then with this new veteran community, which we need that.
Yeah.
But then we also need to not just push ourselves, but be pushed, be poked, be prodded, sometimes be pulled along not just in work life, but also in personal life. It's an ongoing conversation in our home. I host a podcast called Veteran Made. The company that my wife and I co-own is called Veteran Made. I spend the majority of my time speaking, to other veterans about this. And she constantly reminds me, do not over-identify with being a veteran. It's an important part of your life, but it is not the only part of your life. And if you over-identify with it, then you're just going to swing all the way over here. And then you're just a pendulum going back and forth, and you can't find your center. And that center is not a place that's where you're just still, right? It's like you're moving, you're working your way through the world. So in your experience, both personal and the work that you've been doing, how do you integrate the individual and the collective when it comes to this transformation coming out of the military?
Look, I think one of the things that you have to decide, and I think it's a liberty, right? I think one, you get to decide who you are, right? And it really is a neat thing to be able to reconstruct identity. I mean, that's a beautiful thing and something that I love to do every so often. Like, oh, I learned something new. You know what? I used to think this, and now I think this. I like that better. That's who I am now. And I think we're afraid of that. That feels funny. And I think that there's got to be, and I know that you talk about this a lot, in the community, what we should be doing is talking about how do we make the world around us better, as opposed to entitlement or we're better than everyone else, right? Or we're worse than, or we're broken, right? Look, I have a whole bunch of civilian friends. They're going through a lot of the same problems that I go through. The trauma might have been different, but you're going through it. You're figuring it out. Everybody's fighting some sort of battle. Nothing, I've heard you say this, like nothing is owed to us, because like if it is, we get it, right? I get the GI Bill, I get my retirement, I get my disability. It's great. And I still have a responsibility to integrate with my ecosystem. And my ecosystem is not the military. And I think we as a collective community, we have to get away from this angry veteran, disgruntled veteran. Like, dude, yes, you're a veteran, and you're like, I'm an American, right? I'm a citizen of the world. And I happen to be American, and this is great. And I'm going to look for ways to make this better, just like I tried to look for ways to make my unit better. And I think that that's the conversation that's not very popular, because there's a culture that exists right now where a little victimization is probably looked at favorably. I mean, look at suicide rates have not dropped at all. They have only gone up. And now a lot of my friends are telling me, who are commanding divisions, these are folks that have never heard a shot fired in anger. And there's this mentality, like, if you're not broken, something's wrong with you, as opposed to, look, you're allowed to be broken and you're supposed to like work towards getting fixed. Like, nobody breaks their arm and says, well, now my arm's broken, I can't do anything, right? You get your arm fixed. Whatever that trauma is, you gotta get that fixed as well. And I think that sometimes we need to call each other out, that like, dude, I got it. It's awesome. You're my brother because you're a veteran, and how are you making the world better? And that's one of the things, again, at the Commit Foundation, we invest a lot of money into our folks. But I tell them, and I never liked the expression before, but I use it all the time. There's no free chicken. Like, I'm going to invest in this, but you must have impact on the world around you. You must contribute to society in a meaningful way. I don't know what that looks like. You might not know what that looks like, but sometimes it'll be just with your family. But the goal is that you have a bigger splash when you continue to go, and you make the world better because you're given an opportunity.
Yeah, that's the problem with the entitlement mentality and consumption as a behavior versus contribution. When you're just accepting entitlements or expecting to accept entitlements and being upset that you're not reaping the benefits of your service, well, then your focus is on yourself, and your focus is on the past. Whereas if you're thinking about contributing, however imperfectly, I mean, God, I would love for there to be more imperfect contribution instead of the imperfect consumption that we're just kind of trading back and forth, right? Like, the personalities in the space do not represent everybody in the community. And they shouldn't. It's because they're the loudest ones, and they're the ones who have the they're the ones that civilians can better understand, right? Because all the movies have been made about them or about their jobs, right? And then it makes it more difficult for the rest of the veteran population to say, hey, I'm here too. I was there too. Here are some of the things that I can contribute, and it creates this vicious cycle where, I mean, yeah, the suicide rates are higher in non-combatant roles than in combatant roles, and I personally think that that's because a lot of people say, well, I don't actually have anything else going for me. And so they get into this doom loop of, well, all right, I mean, nobody wants to say this out loud, but I will say it. The amount of attention that they're going to get after the fact is a lot of what drives that. And it's because as a community, we put that up on a pedestal. It's a problem that we need to solve, but we can't kind of worship the problem solving and worship the problem at the same time.
We can't worship the problem for sure. And I mean, look, I'm very public, 11 combat deployments, but 4 suicide attempts, 2 while I was in uniform, 2 after uniform. I'm not ashamed of those, but I'm not proud of those.
Yeah.
I recognize that as part of my journey. And I recognize that, and I know where it came from, right? And everybody has the thing that it brings them to that point differently. But I will say that, we need to talk about it and quickly be able to say, and this is where I came from, and this is how I got past it, and I don't want to disregard the trauma. I also want to, I don't want to celebrate the problem. I want to address the problem. So let's address it for real, and let's not celebrate it. And I think you're right. I would argue that none of the people who represent us publicly really represent most of us. I'm not really sure who they represent. I mean, I didn't meet most of those. Like, I didn't serve with any of those dudes. And I don't know people who did. Right. So I can't speak to that, but I know that they are not representative. And I do think it does us tremendous disservice, that, when I talk to people about resiliency, it does not look like running 100 miles in a day. That's a type of resiliency. And that's not this, and I don't talk to people about attacking the day or you got to get up at 4:30 in the morning. You don't. Sometimes it's nice to sleep in. It's okay. Right. And I think that we continue this stereotype of, oh, we hire a veteran, they get to work on time and they do a good job. Everybody does that. Everybody should get to work on time and do a good job. Don't hire a veteran because of that. Hire them because they can problem solve, because they can lead up, down, and laterally. Hire them because they like to solve problems. Hire them because they got a motor that won't quit, right? There's lots of really good reasons to hire them. They tend not to be motivated by money. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. There's 1,000 reasons to hire veterans. None of them have to do with how badass they were, right? It has to do with who they are as a human. And again, I think to be part of that 1% that raise your hand, I respect that. Regardless of what unit, what job you had, you're already showing more than 99% of the population. That's why you hire. That's why you want to look for veterans. Not because they did it, but because they've already shown that I kind of want more. I think that's important.
Yeah. So at the Commit Foundation, like, what does the process look like? Like, how do you intake? How do you move forward, coach through, and do all of that?
So the first piece is the application, and the application truly matters. We want people to spend time on the application. It's very reflective. We believe that you don't learn through experience, you learn from reflection on experience, right? That's why you have AARs and hot washes. So
it doesn't discount the experience. It puts the experience in proper context.
Exactly. Let's learn from the experience. So it asks a lot of questions. From there are times when we'll say, look, you need to put more into your application. I mean, we literally get folks that will, like, Well, I'm a veteran, so give me the service. No, like put some time into this. You got to put some work into it. Then we start with some asynchronous learning that is really focused on reflection and, what's important to you? What do you hold dear? What do you like? What do you hate? What was your best day? What did your best day look like? Not what made it the best day, but why do you think it was your best day? How did you feel during that time? And then we move to our veteran directors of veteran services who are like advisors, right? So then they start talking to them and they have one-on-one talks, and that can go on for a little while about, somebody will be like, so what are you looking for? And they'll say, I want a remote job. Well, but here in your learning, you said that you got energy from being around people. Why do you want a remote job? Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let's like challenge the assumptions. And then they'll graduate to ICF coaching, where they'll have specific goals and they'll get coaching sessions. And then our top 10% are selected for workshops where they'll get introduced to a mentor network and do some more exercises. But the truth is, along that way, you'll be introduced to mentors. Like it took me a decade to build what most people call it a network, but I consider my community, right? I got out, I didn't know anybody who didn't have a uniform on. And it shouldn't be like that. So we actually introduce them to people that are decision makers, right? I mean, they own businesses, they run companies, they're partners in consulting groups. We had one guy, he was interested in the NFL. He was talking to presidents of franchises and team owners, right? We want to get you in front of the right people because we believe that relationships are more important than resumes. Now, if you need resume help, do we have a resume coach? We do. We can get you one. If you get into negotiations for salary, we have a negotiations coach. But our focus, like, we're not going to tell you what you wear. We're not going to tell you, like, here's how you talk in a corporate world. We're going to focus on your individual transformation in a very high touch and high impact way.
So you brought up something really important, which is that your network is your community. And you were talking about the primacy of relationships. Like all of these things happen in the context of relationship, right? Your relationship with yourself first, and then your relationship with the people that you have immediate touch points with, or the people that you want to have immediate touch points with. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about the context in which you evaluate your own experience. Like I love that you're talking about the application, the questionnaire that somebody fills out, and then you ask them what they want. And if there's a gap between what they want and what it says that they're interested in, then instead of judging that, it says, okay, well, let's explore why there's a gap there. Why do you want this thing that you say you get energy from and enjoy the opposite thing? Like, let's explore that together and figure out, right? And help you, because we can't do this alone. Everybody thinks we have to do this alone, right? Like, oh, I have to transform myself. I have to figure out how to become a citizen. I have to figure out how to list. Well, the people who didn't serve, they didn't do that. They went to college, they got internships, they built communities, they worked their way from the ground up within an organization or an industry, right? We didn't necessarily have that. So now we have to retroactively do that. But the context of the community that we come from is quite a bit more, I don't know what the word is, but like, you have your MOS, like you have your job, and it's like pretty clear what the steps are. And certain types of people join the military, right? So you're going to get certain types of feedback and certain types of communication styles. Well, now you're in this new operating environment where it's very different, right? So like you need to figure out how to bridge the gap, but you need help bridging that gap and seeing things that you don't see.
100%. We use a process called the recursive navigation model, which it's all based on research and evidence, and quite honestly, these ideas are like 30 years old. A guy named Jack Mesereau came up with them, this idea of transformational learning. And it's been iterated upon, and all we've done is kind of taken pieces from what everybody's iterated on and said, okay, this is the process that we think helps for transformation, specifically for military folks and spouses and intelligence community. I mean, we serve a laundry list of folks. And I would argue you really can't do it alone, because challenging assumptions I don't care who you are, that's hard to do, right? Like you make an assumption and it takes somebody else listening to you going, wait, why do you think that is? I was talking to a very senior leader one day and he said, I really have, I've neglected my family. I got to spend time with my family. I said, oh, your family's mentioned this to you. And he said, no. I said, well, your kids said you neglected them. No. Your wife then said you were neglectful. No. Okay, so how do you know you were neglectful? He goes, well, I just wasn't around. Well, you probably need to have a conversation with them to see what they think, right? But this guy, really smart, really, self-aware, didn't see that. I think any person, that's the thing about transformation is it's not unique. It's what we all need to get to that kind of this self-authoring and then self-transformative self where we start to learn like, wait, I had this reaction. Why did I have that? What was making me think that way? Like, and look, life is hard, right? You don't always have time, right? You're not Buddha, right? So things come up and you react but it is important that we create these holding spaces where we go, okay, I need to write this down, right? I will tell you, I'm at Columbia right now and I took a course and they, one of the things was write a time when somebody tried to develop you and it didn't go well. And when I went into that, I went, oh yeah, this is the worst leader I ever had. He was horrible. When I got done writing it, I went, oh my God, I was an asshole.
Yeah.
I handled this completely wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
take him out of it. I was wrong here, and here, and didn't make this any better. And I think that unless we're forced to kind of reflect on those things, and it's hard to do. Like, I don't always want to think about how I screwed up during the day. I just want to move on. But I think we have to. And I really think that what makes our program so powerful is that we do it in this non-judgmental way. Like, I don't care what your background was, and I don't care what your answer is. One of the things that I'm really conscientious about, and some people are unhappy with it, my job is not to keep you together with your family. My job is to make sure you are getting the reflections that you need. That may lead you in a very different direction than your spouse. And you know what? It's important. What you do with that is important. So I would hope that you address it. But there's multiple ways to address it that may not have you stay together. And so I always say we don't support families, we support individuals, and hopefully that supports the family. Because I do think that if we're talking to the spouse about their issues and we're talking to the husband about their issues, all of a sudden, oh wait, hey, where are there friction points and how do we get through those together? And then you can move forward together. But if so often, I mean, the spouses have been completely ignored in the veteran transition space, and they're going through their own identity, purpose, and community reconstructions as big as any veteran is. So,
yeah, it's a two-part process, right? It's the self-reflection. I mean, keep it in the framework that you're talking about in a spousal relationship, right? Like the number of times that I have, we're all men in particular, but I think the veteran we love our nonfiction, we love our self-help, we love our stoicism, we love all these things, right? We get up early in the morning and we have our coffee and we read and we reflect. And it's like the number of times that I've done that, get up, read, reflect, write, think, totally isolated in myself. And then I go through the day and I don't talk to my wife about any of that stuff. Those days do not go great. The days where I sit down and I do those things and I'm like, hey, some weird thoughts popped up, or cool thoughts or bad thoughts or whatever. In our home, we're open to all thoughts, right? Like we have a joke. If you want to say something, it's like, hey, dark thoughts with CK and Dre, like, all right, safe space, like say the dark thing, right? Those days go great, even if the thing that I was reflecting on is really difficult or really hard or really painful. If I keep those things to myself, even the good ones, those days don't go great because I've only done the one part, which is the self-reflection. If I do both, which is the communication, two, and then the third part, which is receive the communication, which I don't always do that part either. Those are the days that go well, even if there's pain, even if there's suffering, even if there's hardship, even if there's whatever.
No, I think that's spot on, and I think that to really do the work that needs to be done in a relationship, you really have to make sure that am I thinking about the right things, and am I considering my partner in my thoughts? Because and all of a sudden, you're in this new world, and there's a lot of pressures, and we tend to add another pressure of you got to keep your family together. Hold on, let's make sure you're squared away. Like why would I send you out without ammo and then tell you to be a contributing member to the fire team? Let's make sure that you're loaded for bear, and then let's get you in the fire team.
Yeah, that's true. Across different types of relationships, right? Mm-hmm. Like when a service member or veteran is transitioning into a new professional environment, and they just keep all of these thoughts to themselves, but they don't actually run it up the chain of command, down the chain of command, or laterally pull somebody and say, don't be the guy who says like, hey, when I was in the Air Force, we did this. But, say like, hey, I kind of noticed this thing. Am I tracking? Yep, you're tracking. That's this. And then you have a discussion. Or like, oh, wait, no, I haven't noticed that. What's the thing that, okay, can you tell me more about that? And the next thing you know, you're just solving a problem through a series of conversations. And it's not even you solving the problem. You brought the problem to the table for everybody to discuss.
That's it. And what I loved about what you said there is that's all curiosity driven.
Yeah.
And I think that when we're in this transformative time, I think we have to ask a lot of questions. Wait, how do you see this? Right? Tell me how you see it, because you might see it differently than I do. And I want to understand what everybody's seeing, because most friction happens because we think we're looking at the same thing, and we have the mistaken idea that you will see it exactly the same way. And, one of the things that I've learned is, look, the only objective perspective that exists is mine to myself. To everyone else, my perspective is subjective, and vice versa. And the sooner I realize that, the better off now I can ask questions, because I'm like, wait, I thought it was this way, but before I share that, hey, how did you see this? Sometimes, oh no, I saw it that way. Oh, okay, all right, me too. And a lot of times it's like, oh, I saw it this way. No kidding. Holy cow. All right, I got to rethink about that. I do see, and I see it in our community a lot. It's this way. I was in the military. It was this way. Dude. Okay, one, you're not in the military anymore. And that didn't make me an expert on a whole lot. And two, I don't know that we were always right. It was just the way we did it. And I think that and again, we vilify the things that we don't, when our sense making is questioned, that thing is wrong, as opposed to it's just different.
There's a phrase that I injected years ago, like very purposefully as a reminder to myself. And then now it's kind of just become the way that I operate. When I hear something that I don't understand from somebody, whether it's my wife or anybody that I'm talking to, and the person says something to me that my gut tells me I don't agree with, or my gut tells me that I don't understand and therefore probably don't like, I say, that's interesting. I've never thought of it that way before. And I injected that on purpose. Like I tried to make it as conversational and colloquial as possible, right? I've never thought about it that way before. What do you mean? And it forced me to press pause to just allow a little bit more breath, because either maybe they said it imperfectly and I actually didn't understand, or maybe they said something I really did need to understand. And just saying that opens myself up to more conversation, and then opens them up to more conversation. And the next thing you know, we've actually moved past that and we're deeper on something else.
Yeah. No, I love that. I'm a big fan of, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah.
Right. I also find that I tend to be a lot happier because things aren't making me mad. I'm like, oh, you just see it differently than I do. I got it. And it still doesn't mean I agree. It just means I accept that you're seeing it a different way, and it's totally cool.
Yeah, but just those kinds of the conversation in the community conversation in community just opens us all up to more options, and then it helps us narrow and target the options that actually work, because more options aren't always good, right? Like we live in an iPhone world where like we have choice fatigue for everything. I mean, hey, what do you want to watch tonight? Oh gosh, then you spend the next hour flipping through all 17 streaming services that you subscribe to, and then you're too tired to watch a movie. You know what I mean? It's like, and that kind of translates to everything. So it's like, okay, let's open up to the options that is a good pool for us to choose from and work through together, and then go from there.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I'm probably going to use that. I think you're right. I think we have a lot of choice, and I do think, we do have to. I think hitting the pause button on a lot of things is really beneficial, and I think it can bring a lot of peace when we actually start to hit the pause button.
Yeah, press pause, expand your frame just a little bit to try to understand, like you said earlier, like be curious. And it's, curiosity did not kill the cat, right?
No, curiosity and humility are the two things, and again, it's difficult. This idea of transformation, I think about it and I go, it's not about not thinking about who you were or what you did. Like I'll have people like, hey, people didn't even know I was a Green Beret. Okay, that's cool for you, like awesome. And if they did, that's still okay, right? I mean, what you feel was transformative to build you as an individual, totally cool. Like like that's all right, as long as you're not the dude who's wearing the varsity jacket in when he's 30, right? Stop wearing the varsity jacket. Like it's all right to like, hey, you want to wear an American Trigger Puller t-shirt? Cool. And what are you doing today? Like your last chapter, that was your last chapter. What's your next chapter? What's this chapter doing? That's making a difference.
Yeah, that's the most heartbreaking thing to me that I see, is that everybody thinks the adventure's over, but the adventure is actually just beginning. And as long as we put our prior experiences in their proper context, then we can evaluate. I mean, recently I've looked back on my experiences in the military and found painful things that I hadn't actually thought about in the last 15, 16 years since being out. But I was able to put them in the context and step back from them a little bit and say like, I'd never thought of it that way before. What do I think about it? I did it to myself, right? I'm like, well, what does that mean? And just like get curious and wonder. And then, some of them I talk to other people about, right? And then you it's through curiosity and conversation, evaluation, and that's an iterative process too. It's not just in some of it needs to happen in here, some of it needs to happen in here, but then some of it does need to happen in community and in conversation with other people. And maybe that group's a little bit small, right? Like you're not going to share that stuff with everybody necessarily, but doing that work allows you to find out like, okay, who are the people that I can talk to about this? And sometimes that's somebody outside of the military. Sometimes that's somebody who doesn't have those experiences. Like, hey man, I was looking back on this thing and I'm very, very confused. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I've been working with you for the last 3 years and here's how I see you. You're like, oh my gosh.
I talk about, and I've actually talked to athletes about this and veterans. I think there's 3 types of mentors that you need to seek out when you leave service or you leave sports. The first mentor is people who did what you did and then became successful. So they were in the military and then they got out and they did great things. And you're like, man, that's pretty cool. Not, I want to be like them, but they obviously figured some stuff out. The second group of mentors is people that have no tie to what you did, but were successful, right? I have a number of folks that I go to, they never served a day in their life, but man, they are smart and they were successful and they figured a bunch of stuff out in very different fields. And then there's this third group that nobody thinks about. And it really, I actually think it should be for everybody, but it certainly contributes to the veteran experience and the athlete experience. Is you need to go find mentors that are younger than you. And if you think about it, the two places where people are constantly coming in and they're younger than you, the longer you stay there, the older you are, but you're being pushed, right? You're being pushed physically, you're being pushed mentally, you're being pushed by your values as generations come in with different experiences. And when you get out, I mean, 5 years out, I looked around, everybody's a middle-aged white guy. I'm like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Like, everybody thinks like I do. So I started to seek out these people who were younger than I was to say, like, hey, how do you see this? Right? When I write an article, I'll send it to a couple of folks and I'll be like, hey, tell me what resonates and does this mean anything to you? And sometimes it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, this isn't, wow, okay. So this is a different target audience. And I get a lot of challenge to, wow, I was thinking it was this because of my experience, but they're seeing it a very different way at their age. So maybe it changes my thinking or how I communicate it or whatever. But I think it's really important to have those mentors that you were talking about who you can bounce stuff off of, but they shouldn't all look like you. They should look different, and they should have different backgrounds and different gender, race, like just different experiences, because they're going to come up with something that you've never seen.
At the very least, you're going to get more emotional data than you otherwise would have had, right? But at most, you'll be able to have a conversation and develop a relationship with somebody that you can learn from, and that you can just like be in community with. I mean, we've lost the art of conversation. I think, and listen, I'm as guilty of it as anybody because I host a podcast that's a very, structured way of having a conversation. But part of why we've lost the art of conversation is because we've lost the art of community. And we lost the art of community because we're not just that interested in other people anymore. We're constantly looking at like, how can I respond to this person, or what? Because that back to consumption and contribution, right? Like when we put a hyper focus on contribution, like that has a downside as well. It's not a criticism of your framework, but just there's a downside of that, because when I'm thinking contribute, well, actually sometimes receiving is a part of that, is a necessary part of that, because then if you're just contributing all the time and you're not receiving, then you're not in community, you're not in conversation, and you're just talking past each other.
Yeah, I think, there's an author who wrote the book, a guy named Capra, who wrote the book Web of Life. And I think that, contribution, and he talks about white blood cells, right? White blood cells have cognition in that they know what they do. They know what they're supposed to do. They know what they're supposed to attach onto and what they're not supposed to attach onto, right? And if it does what it's supposed to do, it allows the entire ecosystem of the human body to be successful. When they don't do anything, or worse, they do something they're not supposed to do, they bring the entire ecosystem to its knees. And I think when you contribute, I think there is a give and take, right? It's what do I attach to the right thing? What do I attach? What do I not attach to, right? When do I give? When do I receive? When do I speak? When do I listen? I think when I hear like what you just said, I think of, it tends to be, how do I make myself better? And what I'd like people to be thinking of is, how do I make the world around me better? I'm going to make the assumption that existing, or actually being, is you're already making yourself better. So if you're going to move to that next level, right, then how am I making other people better? How am I making the world around me better? And I think to me, that's contribution, right? And I have to give people what they need when they need it. And sometimes that means I have to receive this from this person because that's what they need me to do right now. And I have to keep my mouth shut because their thing needs just my attention. That's how I make the world better. And I think that's really important. And I think that, again, it takes, you have to be thoughtful. And it doesn't, I don't think it's natural. I think it's a learned thing. And it's certainly, some of it is not what we had in the military. I think the older I got, the more mature I got in the military, the more I understood it. But it took me a long time to get there. Probably by the time I was a senior 03, I kind of figured it out. But up to that point, I was just kind of a jackass.
Yeah, and sometimes it's awkward, and even when you've been practicing it, it's awkward, and sometimes it might need to be. I mean, back to the spousal example, right? Like sometimes, if my wife just starts saying some things to me, I'll just be like, "Hey, what are you looking for me in this? Do you want a response? Do you want my thoughts, my opinions, my advice, my critique? Do you want any of that? Do you just want me to listen? Do you want me to be quiet? Like what is it that you're looking for me?"
Yeah.
We don't do that enough with anybody. I mean, I think spouses are the kind of low hanging fruit example, I think, because a lot of people can pretty easily grasp onto it and get the idea. But the more practice we do, the more that we practice that with everyone in our lives, especially our professional counterparts, mentors, mentees, like that opens up.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Instead of looking at everything, oh, there's a problem I have to solve. As opposed to, oh, you just want to vent to me. Got it. I'm listening. Yeah, those sons of bitches, they suck.
Yeah.
Right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that's what that person needs at the moment.
Yeah, that's it. Well, JC, I could do a Rogan length episode with you, but I think that just means we'll have to have you back. Where can folks find you? Where can folks find the Commit Foundation? Where do you want to drive traffic? Where should we collaborate?
Yeah. So look, they can find me on LinkedIn, but I'd love for them to go to the Commit Foundation, commitfoundation.org. Look, if it's a service, we are a lifetime organization. So once you're accepted into the program, you're a fellow for life. We will invest in you. If you're whether it's your first pivot or your 10th pivot, we're gonna be there for you. And if you want to mentor, there's a place to sign up to mentor. If you want to donate, which is always helpful, we'd love that. But most importantly, tell people about us, because I'm not saying this because I'm in the organization. I'm saying this because there's a lot of VSOs out there, and they're doing great stuff. I've never seen another organization do what the Commit. When Anne-Marie Craig started this in 2012 with Guy Filippelli, and then Alex Krogarter took it to the next level. It's really a magnificent. It's what we all ought to be doing. And, I'm proud that I'm part of the organization. If I wasn't, I'd still tell you it's the best thing I've seen out there.
Yeah, I'm excited. Obviously, we talked about I'm going to sign up to be a mentor and get more involved with the organization, which I'm very, very excited to do. And we'll tag everything and link everything out. JC, to end each episode of the podcast, as you know, I ask an open-ended question. What's on your heart and your mind for our community right now? Could be a piece of advice, something you want to get off your chest, or something you want to reiterate that we've talked about today. JC, what's on your heart? What's on your mind?
I think, what this conversation has reminded me is you're not alone, right? The struggle you're facing, it may be uniquely yours, but you don't have to go through it alone. And there is, I've written before, you can get on the right side of despair, on the other side of despair. And I would encourage people that if you're feeling alone, like that you're in this by yourself, and you got it, because we've trained you to do that. We've trained you to solve all your problems alone. Look, you're going to bring somebody else. You're going to be doing somebody else a favor by asking for help, because I love it when people are like, "Hey, will you help me with this?" Man, that makes my day. I love that. So I would, for our community, I just, we're not alone. We're all, the experiences are all different, but we succeeded together once. We can continue to succeed together.
Well said, brother. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your energy. Appreciate your work. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, brother.